Hello and welcome to another book video. I know I'm a little bit late. I'm still trying to figure out my filming schedule for this channel, and I am gonna do my September and October reading wrap-up. Don't come for me. I know we're in the middle of November. I'm doing the best I can. I'll be better at the end of December. I thought I'd do this every 2 months, like talk about all the books that I finished, what I thought about them, if I recommend them to you. These are going to be spoiler-free reviews. I'm going to talk about the books if I thought that they were good, interesting, entertaining, if I thought that they were... Some of them are like... Some fantasy books can be a little bit predictable at times, and I also want to talk a little bit about that. Like, sometimes things can be entertaining even though they're a little bit predictable, but I also want to talk about the ones that are not. I read 13 books. I think that that's a pretty good job. I work full-time. I traveled a lot. I do read a lot during traveling, but also like I read on planes, not when I'm like traveling. Let's start about the book that I read the first this month. This is The Faith of the Sun King by Nisha J. Tooley. This is the third book in the series. I can't give too many details about the third book because I don't want to spoil the series for you. I think this whole series is very ACOTAR inspired, and I don't say that in a bad way. If you liked ACOTAR, you will probably really enjoy this series. I'm gonna be honest, if you liked ACOTAR and you're having a little bit of withdrawal, I definitely suggest picking up this series. There are a lot of things that are very, very similar in events, characters, powers of people. The only thing that I don't really like about this series, that I think the author didn't really convey, is that I understand that she wanted to have like a morally gray shadow daddy. Don't we all? I don't think she fully was able to do that here, because I don't think that she's fully... The character is like the male love interest. He's not... It's really hard to explain away his behavior. Sometimes, I've talked about this before, there is a difference between explaining something and excusing something, and the author is very good at explaining why the character is doing the things that he's doing, but some of the things are just not good. He still did the deed. I would say if my friend was dating this guy, I mean, straight to jail. Get a restraining order. There is a couple of things in here that are just... I really hope that younger girls don't read this and think that this is how we can explain away really possessive, violent behavior. Let's leave it at that. From someone who has been in some really bad relationships, some of these things do give me the creeps. And I don't think that it is made as well as the characters in ACOTAR. I don't know, like ACOTAR isn't like the best series in the world, but a lot of people have read it, so you're able to make like comparisons to it. This is the third book. The fourth book is coming out. The pre-order is coming out now in November. I did pre-order it. I'm very excited to see what happens. It is about Lore, a girl that is in prison together with her two siblings, and all of a sudden she is brought out of prison to compete in what I only can explain as a mix between the Hunger Games and the Bachelorette. That's what book 1 is about, and then it progresses and becomes other things as well. It is entertaining, but it has its flaws. I do though enjoy a lot of the characters in this, and I enjoy the author's spin on a magic system, but some of it almost reads a little... And again, I don't know if I mean this in a bad way. Some of it almost reads a little computer game. Like, we're going on a quest in World of Warcraft. You walk from one country to another and the scenery just swiftly changes. It's giving that. It's giving World of Warcraft, but make it into ACOTAR. I would say that this whole series is a 3-star series, which is not bad. That's nice. It's just not amazing. But hey, I bought the 4th series. I have all the 4 books soon, so not bad. Just not amazing, but definitely something to read while you're waiting for the next book in the ACOTAR series, which is going to be like, what, 2031? at this rate. I also did read the Powerless by Lauren Roberts. This came so highly recommended. This is young adult romantasy, so there's zero spice, and if I'm gonna be honest, there is zero romance as well, and I hate the characters in this. They're so annoying. Like, the characters are annoying. The only one I like, oh my god, let me remember the names of these. So Kai is the morally gray, which is honestly, he's not morally gray, he's morally pitch black. And then we have Payden, which is the female male character, and then we have, what's the name of the older brother? I literally forgot about him. Oh my god, the amount of trouble I had to go through to find that the name of the character was Kit. That's the brother, the older brother that's supposed to be king. This book is, to me, it's a copycat book. It feels very much trying to be Hunger Games but not succeeding. It's like Hunger Games but from Wish. The writing is incredibly repetitive, and there's a couple of like catchphrases almost that keeps getting repeated again and again and again. It's just uninspiring, and I don't understand who's recommending these. There's no spark. There's no nothing. It's so hard to believe that any of these characters would fall in love with each other. They're just all very annoying. The girl Payden is basically powerless in a world where everybody has powers, and everybody who doesn't have powers are either forced to leave the country or getting executed, and she's just trying to go under the radar until she gets taken out to be part of the competition that's like a Hunger Games, and that's where she meets Kit and Kai. It's just not a good book. It's just not entertaining. It's just not engaging. I was just annoyed parts of it and the end of it as well. And there is more parts out, but I'm not gonna read it. This is like a 1.5 star. There's so many better books out there than this one. I just think this is uninspiring. Just read The Hunger Games. Just read The Hunger Games. I just didn't think this was a good book. I'm sorry. I don't like the writing. I don't like the characters. I didn't like the development. It was predictable, but not in an entertaining way. I know I sound harsh, but I didn't think this was good. Okay, I had to charge my battery. I do realize that those two books made me sound a little bit like a hater. I'm not a hater, I promise, okay? I'm not okay, I don't have high expectations of books, but sometimes, okay, hear me out. I do think that the most important thing of reading a book is that you're entertained. And with especially Powerless, I was just annoyed. Bigger parts of this, and also there are parts of this book where I am annoyed as well, where I'm like, there's no way you can explain this away. He still did the deed. And also there are some repetitive things going on with like the plot where you're like, somebody has been reading a lot of Fae books. With this one, I just think that the characters are unlikable. They're unlikable, and I didn't like the writing, and also you're not rooting for any of these people. You're not rooting for any of these people. At the end of the day, with characters, sometimes it's like, oh, but they're growing, they're getting better. They're getting worse. They're getting worse, and you cannot explain away or excuse the behavior. He's still a bad person. He's just not as bad as you thought it was gonna be. But he's still not not to give away too much. Maybe we're gonna talk more about that in another book in a bit. Let's talk about a book that I did enjoy, and this book I don't have a copy on because you're not able right now to buy a copy of this book, and this is Vesselless. Well, let me get the author. I can't even read the author on the cover, but I will put the book up here, and I will link everything that I'm talking about down below in case you are interested in checking out any of these books. Vesselless, I don't know if, because I'm pretty sure this is a self-published book. It is available on Kindle Unlimited. That's how I read it. And then I wanted to buy a copy and it was sold out. So I don't know if they're buying new copies. I don't know if this has been picked up by publisher. I have no idea, but I thoroughly enjoyed this book. I would say that this is a 4-star book. It is very entertaining. It was like a twist of like romantasy mixed with a little bit of like almost ghost spirits kind of a thing. I really truly enjoyed it. This is about Nisara, which is the next in line to a throne, but her father killed the former king, and that king is now he's hunting souls for the kingdom of death basically, and he has been given a chance to come back to his old life, but of course in the way is Nisara. So the former king Dagon, Dagon, I guess, he is, I mean, he's dead, he is a spirit, but he can materialize. It's a very interesting plot. And Nisara is competing in a tournament, and when you are an heiress, or if you are a ruler of a kingdom, you get a vessel. The vessel is basically a ring that you put on your finger and you're not able to take it off, and then a spirit can come into your vessel and help you out with life, with tasks, with stuff. Gives you powers basically. So the king has a vessel that he then stole from the former king, and then Nisara has a vessel where she already has a spirit that is helping her out, and everything just goes from here basically. It is a very interesting story. There are some this book does have some spice. This is not a young adult, but it's more about the plot than the spice. But I definitely will say it is very it's very like love driven, the story, but it's not that the smut is taking over, because I love reading about love, love all about it. I just don't need the book. I don't like when people get it on in chapter 2. I'm not interested in that, and this book is definitely not that. And also it ends in a way where I am very intrigued to read the next part whenever that's coming, because it ends in a way where technically there's an end to the story, but you also realize that there will definitely be more parts. So I was very thoroughly entertained by this book. I definitely recommend you reading it if you are looking for romantasy, if you're looking for something that's not a total copy of all the things you've read before. It is very interesting, although I will say not available right now as a hard copy, but I will still link it down below. It's a very entertaining book. I also did read the #1 and the #2, The Veiled Kingdom and The Hunted Heir by Holly Renee. This is a very interesting book as well, and this is also, and this honestly, I think that this one is a better version than this one of how do you survive in a kingdom where you need powers when you have no powers, because that's what's going on in this one too. So Nyra is, again, she is an heir to the throne, and she is very, very mistreated by her father, who is sorely disappointed that she does not have any powers in a world where everybody has powers. She has none, and he is just very disappointed that the heir of his kingdom is the only one that doesn't have any powers. So she runs away from home, basically living on the streets with her friend, and then with a twist of fate, against her will, not planned in any way, shape or form, she gets involved with the rebellion, and she has to keep her identity hidden, at the same time also keep hidden that she doesn't have any powers, because everybody has powers and it is a big secret that she does not. And then of course the son of the rebellion leader, I think his name is Dacer or Dakre, Dacer, I have no idea. It's such a weird name. I will put it here. As a like English is not my first language, I don't know I've ever heard anyone with that name, but he is basically, he's attracted to her, but he's also like very suspicious of her. And this one has one of the most entertaining scenes that I have read in a romantasy novel, which is where the main character, like the main male character, is making an absolute fool out of himself on like, and it's like, I feel like sometimes it's so easy to be like, oh, the man is so cool and he's playing it cool and he's good at everything. There is a scene in here that is utterly humiliating for the man, and you're just like, and it's thoroughly entertaining, because sometimes we need that. We don't want the perfect man, we want someone that's a little bit human, and I do appreciate that with this one. Second book is the continuation of their story. This is not as good as this one. Still entertaining. I finished it, I liked it, but there is one thing in this book that literally made me eye roll in real life. I was like, where it's just like, I understand that sometimes you have to write stuff into the plot to make stuff happen. You know, sometimes you have to like force the plot to move on. But there was one thing in here where I'm like, that would not have happened. That's not the choice that you would have made. And I understand it's written to further the plot, but it did make me annoyed. With that being said, will I read part 3? Because clearly, after reading these two, it's not finished. Yeah. Of course I will. My next video will actually be the books that I plan to read before the end of the year. I'm gonna film that book, like I'm gonna film that video right after this one. That's coming soon. And I wonder if I should check out when book 3 is coming, because I did enjoy this series. I would say that this one is like a 2.5. It's okay, it's still good, but it's not great. And I would say this one, I enjoyed this one. I would give this one a 4. I would maybe even give this like a week 3 or like 2.75. It's not as good as this one, but it's still a good book. I do recommend it. I definitely would not say like, ugh, you don't need it. No, it was good. I think that this one, this is Dragonfall by L.R. Lamb. I think that this is marketed, look at this, it's so beautiful. I think this is marketed as a romantic series. The first opening of this book basically is the author saying how much he loves Robin Hobb. I think that's in the beginning here somewhere, or maybe in the end. I don't know. Somewhere I read that she was very inspired by Robin Hobb, and also on the back Robin Hobb is saying, what you will find here may be exactly what you love in fantasy. Dragonfall is an intriguing blend of magic, a thief, a trickery, and an unexpected dragon. That's pretty much what this book is. This is a dragon shifter, but it's basically about a dragon shifter and a thief, and it also deals with non-binary and they, them, and pronouns in a way that I wish society would. In a way that I wish society would. If you are non-binary, if you are wanting to maybe broaden your horizons on what pronouns could mean, this is the book for you. They do it in such an amazing way, and yes, it does feel a little Robin Hobb, but what this one doesn't do, okay, I would say that this is a 3-star. I think this is very intriguing. This is not very romance driven. This is definitely fantasy first, but there is a little bit of a love story in the background. This is a fantasy novel. The world building of this one is incredible. You can tell that the author is very much, again, inspired by traditional fantasy. The problem with this book, it is very thin, and I don't know if you usually say that, but when you have world building that goes on into almost 60% of the book, it doesn't leave that much to the actual plot, and I feel like this book ended too quickly. I think that I understand, without giving away too much of the plot, I understand that this book ended where it did, but I really think this book could have easily have been 100 more pages without feeling too long. This book felt like it could have been flushed out more because the world building is so heavy, and I don't feel like we really got into it, if I'm gonna be honest. But there's a couple of characters in here. There is a thief, there's an assassin, there's a dragon shifter. It is about how their paths are crossing. It is about true enemies, to not lovers but somewhere in the neighborhood, but again, that isn't the main part of the plot. It's very interesting. It is more classic fantasy. I do enjoy it a lot, but again, I do think that this book could have been more. For the world building that's going on here, for the more than 50% of the book, I do wish that we had a little bit more of the actual plot, but I do like the plot in here. I do like the plot. There is a thief that is trying to prove the innocence of a family member, crosses paths with Dragon Shifter, and it's basically reluctant like companions for a common purpose, and it just takes from there. It's very entertaining, but also it could have been more. I think it should have been more fleshed out. I would say this is a 3-star. Not bad, but this could easily have been a 5-star. If this had been a 600-page book, and I say that with love, this could have easily become a 5-star. If it was more. This book was more. This is something that me and my friend Ali Dawson has been laughing about. Because for some strange reason, I read all 3 of these books, even though I thought the first one was okay. The second one was No. And then for some absolutely mystifying reason, oh, that's fun because it's called Misty, I decided to read the third book, and let me be the one to tell you, don't do what I did. Okay, this is The Ever King by L.J. Andrews. This is basically about a king that's been exiled, and he's been exiled by another king, and that king's daughter accidentally opens the portal again so that he can travel between their countries, and he decides to kidnap her. That's how the story begins. It's very entertaining. It is extremely romance and, let's be honest, kind of smut driven. This could have been, this is pirate fae. Didn't think that that would be a plot, like subgenre, but here we are. This is pirate fae. This could have been a pirate romance. It did not need the magic. It feels like the author had this idea, and then fae was popular, fantasy was popular, and it just ended up being fantasy fae, even though it could have easily just have been pirate. Some magic things in here are, oh, that's kind of cool, that's kind of different, I like that, and then some of it is just, we didn't need that. Also, again, this man isn't morally gray. He's just a bad guy, and I feel almost like there are a place in this book where the author is like, there's a lot of, especially in these two books, there's a lot of places in these books where the author will literally say the silent part out loud. She will write out the tropes as she is writing them. She will basically be like, oh, he doesn't like anyone but her, and she will write it out. She will write it out, and it's like, you're not supposed to say it out loud. So there is a point in this book where the author is basically saying what I was thinking, which is like, maybe she's like more evil than she thought. Yes, because he's not a good guy, and that is, again, it's one of those problems that I sometimes have with books where they're trying to write a morally gray man, and it's like, you know, he's just not a good guy. He's just not a good guy. But yeah, honestly, what I told you about the plot, that's basically the plot. This one does end on a cliffhanger, and because it ended on a cliffhanger, I decided to read The Ever Queen as well. If you read this one, this is a 3-star. I think that this one is really nice. I think it's very entertaining. It's very smutty. But if you're looking for a very smutty, fae, pirate, fantasy, romance book, it's very specific. Definitely. I'll give this 3-star. I think it's entertaining. Definitely. It ends on a cliffhanger. You don't need to read this one, okay? Just read the synopsis somewhere. This book is so repetitive. It is so repetitive. The author is just writing the same things again and again and again. And my friend even stopped reading this one. She DNF'd it because she's like, I really don't care. And yes, I finished it though, but I will say I really don't care. This one isn't part 3. This is a freestanding book, but it gives a lot of spoilers for what happens in these two. So if you haven't read these two, they will basically tell you what's going on in this one. This one is better than The Ever King, The Ever Queen. The Ever Queen, this is a 1.5 star. It's boring, okay? You don't need to read it. It's violent, it's boring, you can tell that when the author cannot lean on the smut, she really doesn't know what to write about. This one is, again, it's a romance driven. It's not as smutty as the Ever King book, but it's definitely, there is a subplot that is like a little fantasy rivaling kingdoms, but basically this is forced marriage, and it's enemies to lovers, forced marriage, and I've read better. I'd say this is better than the other one. I'd say this is a 2.5 star. It's fine. I got through it. But I didn't fly through it. I wasn't super engaged. And I also think that I don't like the characters. She seems extremely annoying, and he is not described, his good parts are not described well enough, so they excuse his bad parts. I'd just be like, I don't want to date any of you. Like, you both seem pretty annoying. I'd just be like, peace out. So I think that that's probably, honestly, the biggest problem with all three of these books. The characters are not likable. I just don't care about any of these people. So don't do what I did. Don't read all three. I read quickly, so maybe it didn't matter that much, but Sometimes the first book isn't great, so you keep reading. I'm looking at you, Throne of Glass. First book, meh. Second book, third book, amazing. Sometimes you need to get through ACOTAR. First book, eh. Second book, mind blown. It's like literally the blueprint for a romantasy. I was hoping this was gonna be that, but no, it's just downhills. Okay, immediately when I started reading this book, I was like, oh, mistakes have been made. This is the Book of Azrael, God and Monsters, book 1 by Amber V. Nicole. I read the second one in this one as well. I'll put a picture up here. Hopefully I'll have pictures up of these books while I'm talking about them. I don't think I bought the second one, because sometimes I like to buy the second one when I read them. This is the same. I read the first one. It's about Diana, and she is basically, her sister gets saved by this cartoonish evil man that's, for bigger parts of these books, just evil for no reason. Like, they will not explain. Basically, they will explain, and it's like, well, they've always been evil. It's like, why is he evil? Don't worry about that. The author didn't worry about that, so why should you worry about that? It's just really comical. And the first chapters, I read them, and he is literally described, I've seen villains in the Powerpuff Girls with more nuance than him. I was literally laughing at some points in the beginning of the book, and I was like, mistakes have been made. I'm gonna hate this book. Basically, he saves her sister in exchange for her forever service to him as like an assassin. So they are both given basically an eternal life, and she is super strong and like she's a badass, which I like that part. And the male interest in this one is, I think his name is Samuel or Samkel. I think it's that, and he is like, she accidentally awakens him or like summons him from his other dimension, and he is supposed to be like the ruler of all worlds, and he's just kind of like catching on that there's this evil plot going on in land, and she is against her will, because this boss of hers is threatening to kill her sister if she doesn't cooperate. She's just drawn into this, looking for the Book of Azrael basically, and this god, I think it's Samkel. Wait, let me see his name. Samkel. I hope I'm saying that correct. Again, English, not my first language. He is just trying to divert all of this, and then the plot like goes from there. It's supposed to be an enemies to lover, but it is just extremely annoying, and especially in book 2, it's, again, they're trying to force this like arc where she just falls into like sorrow and madness and evilness, and there are so many parts of these books where people and things are just evil for the sake of being evil, because I guess the author did not have time enough to think about why things are the way that they are. And there are so many times where I like read these stories where I'm like, first of all, some scenes are extremely gory and very violent and descriptively violent for an unknown reason, and she's trying to make them like comically like evil, like arc enemy evil, and it's just not 100% working. I've seen people love this book, and I cannot for the life of me understand what they're seeing that I'm not. People have been comparing this one to Crescent City. The only thing that this one has that I think Crescent City also has is that it is fantasy, like urban fantasy. In a world, in cities with cars and weapons that is very reminiscent to Crescent City. But the characters in these are just, they fall flat. And it's a very confusing concept as well, with like space, and which Crescent City, in its, to be fair, sometimes is too, but it's like different dimensions. It's like trying to be Crescent City, but it is confusing and the characters fall flat. There are 2 characters that are like side characters, and not to give away too much about like what's happening in book 2, but there are 2 side characters that I would love to read a book about them. Only those 2, nobody else. And it's hard to explain, but again, it comes down to, I don't care if you end up together or not. you just seem like two very annoying people. And Diana, I mean, she needs a reality check. Honestly, I think that the author is trying to write about grief, but I also don't think that she's really pulling that off. I don't understand people giving this a 5-star. Maybe you didn't read the same book, maybe we don't have the same preferences. I'm just like, I'm not blown away. And I read part 2. I didn't read part 3 though, because I was like, I literally finished part 2 and I was like, I don't care. There is a part 3. I'm sure exciting things happen. I won't be the one to tell you. This book I really did enjoy, and I have been looking at other people's review of this book, people that have loved it, people who haven't loved it. I would say that this one, for me, I would say this one is a 4-star. I had an amazing time reading this. It was so entertaining. I flew through this book. This is about Ophelia. Her mother is a necromancer, and it starts with her mother passing away and giving her necromancer powers to Ophelia. Ophelia and her sister find out that they are actually in debt and they're about to lose their house. And they've been living in this house their entire life, and all of a sudden Ophelia's sister disappears, and she finds out that her sister has gone to Phantasma, which is this like Hunger Games but indoors in a gothic, magical, very violent mansion with demons and ghosts and all of that. And she decides to go after to save her sister and ends up participating, and it goes from there basically. In the beginning, I was thoroughly confused. This takes part in New Orleans. I could not pinpoint exactly when, because it is, and I like that. I like being a little bit confused. I like thinking, wait, when is this? Wait, where is this? I love thinking like that, because that is one thing that I think about a lot in the Sarah J. Maas books. I'm like, wait, where is this? When is this? And I thought about that a lot in this book, trying to pinpoint. She's wearing long skirts and corsets, but they are still talking about cars. So I would say early 1900s, maybe something like that. It's an interesting plot, and I thoroughly enjoyed this one. It's kind of smutty. I didn't mind it though. I thought honestly that was pretty well written. Sometimes it's so corny that I'm just like, and I will say a lot of the times I'll read the first smut scene in a book and I'll be honest, I kind of go past them. I don't care. I don't want to read about that. I want to read about people falling in love. I don't need to know the details, okay? There are a lot of books that go into way more detail than I'm interested in, and I think that this book did a good job being smutty but still staying on story, and it's almost got a little bit of a horror feeling to it without being scary. I was not scared by this book. Also, this book has a little bit of a twist, and I really enjoyed the ending of this book. I really enjoyed how this book took a turn, because I feel like sometimes books are very predictable. Fantasy books, especially in this day and age, has a tendency of being entertainingly predictable. Like, you know exactly what's gonna happen. And I will say with this book, it was some differences to that, and I like that. And not just one time, several times I was like, oh, that's a little bit different. Oh, that's a little bit different. Oh, I like that. I feel like the author took their time to figure out stuff in the story that made you go, huh, which I don't necessarily think that maybe all of these other books did. So I will say kudos for that, for keeping us on our toes and for keeping us thinking, oh, so what about, okay, if that, then I like that. I think that this was a good book. If you like more smutty books that are still plot driven, especially if you're into like the ghosts and everything, I definitely think that that one could be for you. Let me talk about my favorite book that I've read so far. You can tell there are a couple of these books that I really enjoyed. I loved Quicksilver. Okay, I'm gonna say something. Okay, I think this is better than ACOTAR. And I think this is better than ACOTAR because this is good already from book 1. And I feel like sometimes, especially Sarah J. Maas, she has a tendency of writing a weak book, first book. Crescent City was better though. Crescent City, I think she wrote a good book. This is Quicksilver by Callie Hart. Have I said the author for any of these other books? Again, they will be linked down below. This, I think has been picked up by a publisher, because I could not find the hard copy of this anymore, but it is still available on Kindle. I will link it down below. This book is thick. This is a 550-page book. I saw this cover and I was like, there's no way this is good. There's no way this is good. Kingfisher? Recent who? Who? Kingfisher. He is the kind of arrogant and sarcastic that is still not evil. And again, this is morally gray, made in a way where it actually explains stuff, and I love that. And the world is a winter world. I think that's very exciting. It deals with the lack of water in a very interesting way. So the main girl, I don't even remember her name. I remember the guy. That tells me something. A main character, I'm pretty sure her name is Ceres. She is poor, living in a desert land in a city where there is a lack of water. And again, I really like how they are talking about the lack of water, and the book starts with her stealing something that ends up getting her into a lot of trouble with the queen of this land and the guards of this land. So she's taking it to the castle, and she accidentally opens a portal to another world, and Kingfisher comes and grabs her to this wintry land. And I loved the magic in this book. I loved the romance in this book, and I really like the side characters of this book. I think I like the side characters in this book more than I like the side characters in any book that I have read this entire time. Honestly, they're incredible. And again, this book has this way of making you feel exactly like I felt during reading 2, 3, 4, 5 of ACOTAR, and how I felt reading 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, maybe not 6 so much, but of Throne of Glass. It is just an absolute page turner, and I could not put this one down. I don't know if you're able to get a hard copy right now, but I think you can pre-order. Again, check the link down below. But for me, this is a 5-star. This is described as dark fantasy, and I think, okay, I don't know why this is described as dark fantasy. There is nothing for me that would make this dark fantasy, except maybe how some of this smut is described. But there is no non-consensual, there is nothing like that whatsoever. But it also, like, it all just makes sense, and the story, the romance and all of it makes sense to the story. It's not just there because the author wants to write a lot of that. I just thoroughly enjoyed this book. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I just cannot wait for what's going on going further, because maybe I didn't say it in the beginning, but she is a human in a human world, and he is Fae in a Fae world, and that is pretty similar to ACOTAR, but it definitely takes a big turn from there and is very different. And the banter in this one, the dialogue in this one, A+, absolute A+. Cannot recommend this enough. If you have read ACOTAR and you really don't know what to read next, this one and Spark of the Everflame, that's where you start there. And once you've read those, I would say Vesselless was really nice too. Okay, let's end with, I think I've talked about all my books except one. Who told me to read this? I'm not mad, I just have questions. Okay, this is funny though, because this is the last book that I read in October, and I started November with reading book 2 and 3 because I was like, okay, the first book is it's a 0.5 star. It's an awful book. Like, truly, if you love this book, I'm so sorry, but you have got to admit, and if you like this series, because I will say book 2, book 3, they're really good. Book 1, it's awful. Like, it's truly an awful book. The writing is horrible, the characters are so predictable, and they're so similar to each other that if you didn't put the name in the beginning of the chapters, you wouldn't know which was which. It's just not a good book, and there is a lot of bullying going on in this book to the point where it's painful to see. And they're trying to make this enemies to lover thing, and there's absolutely nothing of that going on in book 1. It's just enemies. And I will say, this is the part where, like, you remember when you have a friend, they're dating someone who's awful, and then they try to, like, oh, but he's nice now, he made it up to me. It's like, you might have forgiven him, but I didn't. That's me in this book. Book 2 and book 3 are trying to explain why people are acting absolutely atrocious in book 1. But babe, I remember book 1. You can't explain it away. It's like you're trying to make excuses, but it's just an explanation. It doesn't excuse it. And I've read 3 books now, and I still have not seen a single excuse for the absolutely abhorrent, like, I will give you trigger warning. This is physical abuse. This is like mental abuse. This is sexual abuse. It is rough. It is rough. This is not young adult. This is about 2 twins that are basically living a horrible life in Chicago nowadays, and one day they are basically said, like, hey, you know what, you're actually heirs to a fate throne, let's go to another dimension, but you have to get through Zodiac Academy. If you pass the school, you can have your inheritance. But the other students, of course, are not happy about these 2 heirs that all of a sudden show up, and it is a rough ride. Book 2 and book 3 are good. I will admit, I enjoyed them, but I still can't forget how bad book 1 was. And I can't forgive people. I remember what happened. So I will say, read this with caution. It is a rough book. It is a rough book. I will give this a 1 star. I don't think that was a good book. And if you wanted to write book 2 and book 3, I understand that, but you need to tone down book 1 because it was too much. I don't think that was a good book at all. Again, I'm the fool who read book 2 and book 3 also. But yeah, those were the books that I read this month. Let me know if you read any of these as well. Let me know if you agree with me, how I feel about these. Check the description box for more info. My battery is dying. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you soon again in a new video.